All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Hostel Management April panel discussion. This one is going to focus on hostels that have restaurants and bars or cafes attached, the challenges and the added value of that. So we're going to get started just now introducing our mini panelists today. First, we'll start with Susan.
Okay, there we go. Hey, I'm Susan, and I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia, or via New York, but I run a hostel in Jaco, Costa Rica called Room to Board Surf and Hostel, and it's been open since last April, and our restaurant's been open since September.
Awesome, thank you. And next, Gordo.
So I sort of come from this from another point of view. I have a pub in London, and I've worked in sort of hostels for quite a few years, so I'm in the process of turning the upper floors of the pub I have here into a hostel. Yeah.
And you've got hostel management experience before that, correct?
Yeah. No, I've worked in places in Greece and Budapest for a couple of big chains in Australia and Canada. Where else have I worked? Yeah, Edinburgh, London.
Perfect. So you're kind of coming from a background of information.
Yeah.
Doing the other way around.
Yeah.
Awesome. Amelia and Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex.
I'm Jamile from Brazil. He's from San Diego.
Yeah, we run the Full Sail Hostel we own and run it in Fortaleza, Brazil. And one of our big attractions is the bar in the back of it.
Say that last part again, sorry.
We have a big attraction in the back of our hostel, which would be the full bar, which seems to get a lot of
Perfect.
people.
Awesome.
Have fun.
I've already heard stories. All right, and Bebeto?
Oh, hey, I'm Bebeto. I'm from Brazil, and I run Lifetime Hostels in Rio and São Paulo. We have two hostels in São Paulo, one in Rio, and our last edition is a hostel in São Paulo with a full bar that is open to the public as well, to the guests, of course.
Perfect. And lastly, we have Mark and Chris. They're coming from a little bit of a different background. I'll let them explain themselves.
Yeah, I'm Chris. This is Mark. We're from a company called Tab that lets you take payments and give out cash to guests using a smartphone app. So it's like an alternative to credit cards and a bit like PayPal as well.
Awesome. And they're here to discuss some options of how hostels can deal with money. Obviously, bars add extra revenue. Guests have to pay in some way. So part of this discussion, we're going to talk about technology and how you can use that for your business. So we'll jump right in with the first question. Thank you all so much for being here. What did you add or think of adding to your hostel? So a bar, a restaurant, a cafe, or in Gordo's case, you have a bar and you're adding a hostel. And what were your main reasons for adding one of these? We will start with you, Susan.
There we go. Okay. So basically, I mean, ours was a new hostel that we built from the ground up. So we always thought we would have a bar and a restaurant. That was never in question. In fact, we built two bars, one on the ground floor near the pool and one on the rooftop. We built out the kitchen on the main level floor, but we have a space for a kitchen on the rooftop, but we haven't built that out yet. Plus, we have a shared kitchen. So it was just never a question. We just always knew we'd be doing that, and the idea was just to add value for our guests and hopefully make money from it.
Okay, wonderful. Jamili, Alex?
We also put our hostel in with a bar.
Yeah, it was a minute.
Yeah, we always liked going to places with bars. It's not exactly the biggest revenue maker, but it is in the sense where everyone seems to have more enjoyment out of a hostel with a bar, especially in a place like Fortaleza where there's no bars nearby that speak English or anything. So.
Yeah, and then I also like to help people meet each other. We always wanted, because we're both solo travelers, and always be like in your mind to have a bar at a hostel. That's basically it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So partially for the atmosphere at your own hostel, but also because in your location there aren't exactly tourist bars or places where people can easily go out?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Well, there are, but farther away. Complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Cool. So you wanted to make it easy to get a drink.
Exactly. That's what I was looking for.
Easy, of course. Gordo, what about you? Why did you decide to go the opposite route?
Practicality, I guess. When I sort of London's a sort of pretty sort of capital intensive place to try and get real estate, and after sort of looking at a lot of places, the easiest option, given that I'd always wanted to have a bar in the hostel anyway, was to actually take a pub where the building's effectively it's halfway there, and you've got all the infrastructure sort of in place, and then it's just practicality. It turns out easier this way in the situation I'm in, even though it does take a fair bit longer. But yeah, I think having a bar in there, I sort of agree with a couple of the other guys' points, it's for me when I was traveling, I always like places with bars because booze is a social lubricant, and there's going to be a few other people hanging around. There's some sort of attraction in the place. So yeah, for me, like the others, it was never in doubt. It was always something that the two go hand in hand. I think hostels and booze.
Yeah, for sure. And the bar that you have, did you take it over or did you start it?
I took over. Yeah, I bought an existing pub. Well, the building's a pub, but the place was being sort of run as a cocktail bar. And yeah, I've spent sort of the last about 8 or 9 months, I guess, transforming it. And yeah, now we're at sort of the next step of transforming the upstairs after we've had the fun of dealing with London councils. So it's been a somewhat laborious process, but yes, now the real fun starts.
Perfect. And I'm assuming the hostel is just above it, or is it behind, or what's the physical layout?
It's going to be above. So there's the bars on the ground floor. There's obviously a cellar for storage and so on, and then there's 2 floors above, upstairs. Currently on the top floor. And yeah, so we'll have 42 beds. Yeah, mostly dorms, just the one private room, and then and then the bar will obviously function as a common area and reception, and a bar. So.
Sounds awesome. I'll have to come visit.
And we do really, really good beer as well. I want to point that out. We do a lot of local craft beer, and
awesome.
We don't do things by halves. So.
Exactly what backpackers are looking for: high quality.
Always.
If that doesn't quite align with the Costco beer I bought for the hostel the other day, that was 48 beers for $22.
Yeah.
It's quite the value. And Bebeto, what about you?
Both hostels. Well, the original Lime Time, we have a bar that is only for the guests, which is basically our common area that is actually separated from the reception area. It's like in the back. But the whole idea of it was always just to have a place where people would hang out. The point there was never to make. Well, I mean, of course, you expect to make money out of it, but the idea was only to have a reason for people to hang out. In Rio, we also have a bar just for the guests, but then just recently we bought a hostel bar in São Paulo. That's why we have 2 in São Paulo. That is actually reception area, and the bar is at the bottom, and on the top are the rooms. And they used to run it as a hostel bar, but I remember that they kind of ran it like 2 separate businesses. Focusing mostly on the locals because it's in a bohemian area, like an area with a lot of bars, and leaving the guests on the second plan. And then we try to change that. But yeah, of course, it's a whole different businesses.
Okay. So that brings up an interesting question for all of you. Are your bars open to the public or not? And what issues do you have with that? Jamila, Alex, do you guys want to start?
Our bar is absolutely. We kind of have the same thought as Roberto.
No.
It's not open to the public. We don't want to deal with because it's in the very back, so it passes a bunch of rooms. We don't want to have to deal with strangers going past other people's stuff and potentially things going missing, and it'll be on our shoulders, A. But most of all, Fortaleza, a lot of bars, people just go with groups of friends and sit down. So if we had an open bar, like the hostel up the street does actually, everyone just goes and sits next to each other, and then the traveler comes in, and it's harder for him to meet everybody. So keeping it just in the hostel really allows for us to focus on the guests.
Yeah, just on being focused.
Yeah.
So groups of friends would come in, and they basically just interact with each other, and so it's harder for travelers to then meet other people because the locals aren't really open to meeting travelers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they speak. Most of them don't speak English, so.
So it's hard. This way we can focus on the guests, which was our main intention in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay, totally makes sense. Susan, what about you? Is your bar open to the public?
It is open to the public, but we actually don't get a lot of public. So it really hasn't been a problem. We're not like right on a main street. We're kind of off the beach, like in a little off an alley. So people aren't going to know about us unless they're staying there, or unless they're friends of people who work there or are staying there. Occasionally we get somebody, because the building's pretty cool looking, we'll get somebody kind of wander by and wander in and have a drink because they want to check it out and see what it is. But it's not that often, and it hasn't been a problem yet. Like, we don't get that many people, so it's not a big deal to have it open.
And did you say earlier that you have a cafe as well, or were you just talking about a kitchen? I can't remember.
No, we have a restaurant.
Okay.
No, we have a restaurant with a full menu and
Okay.
and a bar.
Same thing, the restaurant open to the public, but you don't get that many people.
Right, exactly.
What is the setup in terms of, Alex and Jamila said that their bar is at the very back, so people have to pass rooms. If you do have the public come, do they have to pass any common areas or any rooms, or is it really kind of separate?
No, it's right on the main floor, so it's right next to the pool and the front desk. So it's pretty obvious, and all our guests wear a wristband, so we know who's a guest and who's not a guest. So somebody who's coming in can't use the facility, can't go up the elevator, can't go in the pool. So we watch out for that. But if they want to order food or sit at the bar, they can. So
Got it.
It hasn't been a problem yet. It's something we'll have to address in the future if it becomes a problem.
Perfect. Now, Gordo, your situation's obviously a little different. You're starting with a pub, which I would assume is open to the public.
Yes, it is.
Any money. And so, are you gonna continue that, or are you gonna end up keeping it just for your guests?
No, definitely the idea is to keep it open to the public. I know one thing I've we're going to try and do, I guess, is to try and integrate people as much as possible so they do interact with the locals, because I found that happens quite a bit when you've sort of been traveling in backpacker bars, and it ends up just becoming sort of a little insular. No one's actually meeting anyone new. It's all just the same. It's all just travelers and more travelers. So yeah, I've always wanted to try and get people to actually meet the locals. And we're in central London, so there's quite a few people around, and lots of people from different parts of the city and country, I guess. So no, definitely keeping it sort of as a pub. The security part is obviously something that we're going to have to be very sort of careful on. We have lots of CCTV and stuff, and there's a door towards the back of the pub that sort of takes you upstairs. So we're getting the RFID cards and so on installed and all that. But it is, it's something you still have to be sort of very, very conscious of with that many people sort of, at the moment it's just me and a couple of staff going up and downstairs, so it's not a big deal until we know when the doors close, but with a lot more people coming and going, it's something we have to be super, super careful on. So if it does turn out to be a problem, I'd prefer not to sort of shut out the public, but we might have to sort of rearrange our hours or numbers or something like that.
Now, what about, I could see this happening with your situation more than others, but maybe everyone would have this issue. A lot of hostels don't allow locals to stay. Do you guys ever have issues with your bar where people come and drink and they're coming from a little bit further away and they're too tired to go home, or they're too drunk to drive home, they don't want to take a cab, whatever, so they just want to stay at the hostel? Do you allow it? Have you had issues with it? Bebeto, have you had any issues with that?
I've had people that stay there. I try not to let that happen, but I go case by case. Like if I'm there, in general, we have a rule that locals cannot stay in the hostels anyway. But if I'm there and I see the person, or sometimes it's somebody that's regular to the bar, then we will let people to stay. But in general, no, I'd rather not. But we're selling beds, right? So if I trust the person, why not?
And maybe a safety issue as well. If they seem an okay person, but it's that or drive home drunk, maybe you're helping them stay safe for the
Yeah,
night.
I've had a situation where a guy came over and he said, "Well, it's actually this guy says it's actually my friend's birthday. We're actually drinking somewhere else, and I know he's gonna get really, really wasted. So I stole his car key." The guy said to me, "I stole his car key. Here it is. I want to prepay for his bed, and please don't let him go because he's gonna come here. He's gonna ask for his key. Just put him in bed and don't let him go." Eventually, the guy, of course, he didn't stay. He didn't want to stay, so he argued, and then we just gave the car key back after a fight. Not like after he put out a fight. So I mean, it's his decision. But yeah, that was like actually a good idea from his friend.
Smart idea. I could see in the U.S. you're getting into suing culture issues of keeping someone's car key and it doesn't belong to you and all that crap. So maybe you can get away with that in other places easier. Like, here's
Yeah,
your
I mean,
key.
of course, we didn't capt it. I mean, the guy insisted that we give the key back, but we actually thought that maybe he would see a reason why we're doing that, why we're trying to help his friend, and maybe say, okay,
Yeah.
fine, I'll just stay here for a while and then I'll go. You know, he was
Like,
already paid
hey, your
for,
bed's
so
paid for right here. Exhibit A, nice
yeah,
clean bed. All right.
yeah.
Does anyone have any other comments on those issues open to the public, people staying? Yeah, cool. All right, so next question. Kind of a double question. What were your main hesitations to opening a bar and or restaurant? And how did you get around them and decide to go for it? And then with that, what have your biggest challenges been? So kind of a lot to think about. But why don't we start with you, Gordo?
I guess my sort of biggest concern was, given that I come more from the hostel background than the pub trade, was how will I go at actually just running a pub in and of itself, without having the accommodation. Um, Hasn't been a disaster. We're still here, so all good. But that was something, doing it sort of the other way around that I am doing it was certainly a hesitation, but decided it was going to be the best option, just like I said earlier, for practical reasons. And now I guess that sort of things are up and running. It's I don't well, I'm not going to say I don't know what I was worried about, but it was I mean you just got to like doing any business. If you're starting something new, you just got to you get thrown in the deep end, and you're always going to be hesitant. But
So what are your biggest challenges now that it's kind of up and running? Or I guess you're still adding the hostel part on, so you don't totally know what your biggest challenges are yet.
yeah, well, certainly one of the biggest challenges has been dealing with the council. Although before I took over the pub, I'd sort of said in principle, like, yeah, as long as there's no sort of issues with it, I'd sort of spoken in detail about what I'd need to show. But then the actual process has gone from taking, the council said, about 8 weeks to, it'll be about 6 months now before I've got permission. So that's been trying. um, uh, and sort of, I guess the other sort of challenge is to, because it's taken so long, is to keep my mind on sort of keep sort of thinking that we are adding the hostel. It's become sort of quite easy to get caught up in just the business as it is. And I think that's something that I'm going to have to make a sort of very sort of, I guess, conscious point about later on when the hostel does open up, is to not sort of try and dedicate myself to one side or the other too much, and try
Be
and
open
wing
to
it.
both. Okay, perfect. Susan, what about you? What were your, I guess you didn't really have too many hesitations, it sounds like, to opening a bar or restaurant because that was always part of the plan. But what hurdles did you get around to do it? And now that you have them both, what are the biggest challenges you deal with?
Yeah, we always planned on doing it, but there are lots of challenges. One is staffing, that keeping a happy chef, and that's in keeping him happy with what?
I said, are chefs ever happy?
Yeah, they're interesting, but keeping a happy chef has been one major challenge, and keeping him happy with the staff and the volunteers that we hire to work with him is always been an issue. Um, Another issue is, just dealing with inventory is difficult. And we don't have, for example, we don't even have an ice machine because electricity is so expensive in Costa Rica, so we have ice delivered constantly.
Wow.
And we need a lot of ice.
Then have a machine.
It's just so expensive to run there. It's incredible.
Wow.
So it's cheaper to bring it in.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are two. Those are two. We've dealt with a little bit of theft, which is with staff. So that's concerning. Another biggest challenge that we have is.
Sorry, theft of money or of product or both?
Product.
Okay.
Beer. It's a little hand in the coolers.
Right. Okay.
So.
But I can see Bebeto shaking his head. We'll get to you in a second.
Right. Yeah, and that's we've caught them red-handed, and we've got video cameras everywhere. So nothing that none of us probably didn't do when we were 18 or wouldn't have done, possibly. But you have to deal with that. And then one of our other problems is a lack of a POS system that integrates with our reservation system. That's been a challenge for us. So we've got a POS system that we use, but it doesn't integrate, and we're sort of doing that by hand right now, doing the integration, and that's just a pain because we do take tabs there.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that'll bring us to another question in a little bit, so I'll be curious your opinion again. But Beto, I saw you shaking your head when she's talking about theft. I assume you've had issues with that.
Yeah, the inventory is really complicated. We actually did some math on margins, profit margins and stuff, and beer is the worst. I mean, beer, normally the margin is like 100%, so if you buy a beer for one and you sell for two, right? But then every time you lose a beer, that means that you sold one beer and then you didn't make any money if you lose one, you know what I mean? So the loss just compensates. So eventually, talking to the staff like, guys, look, if we sell 50 beers but we lose 25, it works for nothing, And even like when you have staff, you give like a bonus to the staff, like you have this much money to spend at the bar through the month, so like another thing. But then they go and grab a beer, they don't put on the system, or even I go behind the bar and I serve myself, and I don't add to the system. I have some other friends that are club owners and stuff, and I see how they are. You have to learn to be very organized, not the right word, but like be honest about it. Like these guys, they don't go behind the counter. They ask their staff to put on my tab, whatever. So you have to learn those things. Like remember that not because you're the owner, you have to give that example. It's tricky. I think Chris has a better situation because he came from the bar, which is it's a more complicated sort of business, and then he moved into hostels, which it seems like it is easier than running a bar. So and now I'm on the different position. Like it's so much more to do, it's so much more work. So it's been tricky.
Why do you feel it's a lot more work? Because there's more inventory, or you just have more overall issues, or what?
I mean, having the bar only for your guests is one thing, so you have those people there and this. My issues right now is like, first of all, if you have a bar open, the good situation that I have is that my reception and the bar is the same thing, so normally I don't need extra staff. But if we make the bar to be if we want it to be busy, then we have more people working there. Is the noise bothering you guys? Sorry.
I was just wondering if you're doing construction.
Yeah. So if you have more people coming to the bar, you need more staff. But then our biggest problem right now is that we are surrounded by all the bars that are normally more popular than us. So it's hard, the marketing thing and bringing people into the bar and this and that, So, and right now I'm 32. I started a hostel with 25. If it was the other way around, if I was 25 back like now, I think it would be a lot easier for me, but for me it's been tricky because of that too.
Because you're like tired and worn out, or because you don't have as much energy, or because like in what way do you mean?
It's all that, like I'm well known for being the party guy, and my hostel has always been the party hostel of the city, and blah blah. And then, I mean, of course, I now I have 3 hostels, and I'm still by myself. And then when I think about, okay, I'm gonna go do the bar thing, and I'm gonna stay out late, but I know that in the morning I have to be up to deal with so much more that I didn't used to do before. So it's complicated, and you have to trust a lot of people. I still haven't found that. A good situation.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, I know at least for me there's always, someone's like, it's my first night, it's my last night, it's Tuesday night, everyone wants to party, but not realizing we have full-time jobs that we need to be awake and alert for really sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's see, who didn't we hear from yet on that question? Jamili, Alex?
Well, Roberto kind of honestly said the exact same thing we were going to say, so thanks for helping us with that.
I'm going to correct your name real quick. It's Bebeto, not Roberto.
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 Whatever.
He
got it.
That guy.
My bad. Anyways, he really covered a whole lot of the things that we have an issue with. We only actually had one staff member who could keep the atmosphere the way we liked it, but he was awful at doing everything else. So we really couldn't. The only thing that we could do is like when we were too exhausted at the end of the night, tell him go make it happen like us, and he would do that. But that's the only time we've ever found it. It was very brief, and like I said, we had to pick up slack everywhere else. So it's really hard as far as staffing goes when you want to keep a good atmosphere.
So finding people.
Yeah, finding people like us.
Finding people is wonderful as you.
I mean, not to be egotistical, but it's true.
It does seem that often with staff and volunteers, you either find people who are amazing in atmosphere and social and all that, but not so much on the details, or they're the other way around, and finding people that are kind of the whole package, like us.
And then other subjects, well, he wants to say something, but yeah, other subjects, Susan had the same issue with inventory. No ice machine, lots of ice deliveries. The beer, a lot of beers, they disappear. It really makes them almost the most worthless thing we have, but it's the most important thing we have. So.
Yep.
Interesting. So it sounds like you all make more money off of not beer, but that without the beer you wouldn't have a bar, basically.
Yes,
Sure.
basically
Yeah.
it.
Okay, interesting. I did not realize that. Bebeto, what did you have to say?
Yeah, I wanted to add this thing about being the person, the crazy atmosphere and stuff, and I've always been that guy. It was most of my job that was that. And one problem that I've been having is like trying to find somebody to fulfill that gap that I'm not there anymore. It's been so complicated to find somebody that wants to have that much fun and be that the part of the job, because you have to be at least responsible. But it's been very complicated to find somebody like that.
Sometimes it's surprising to me that that's so difficult, but it seems to be a common theme, so I guess we're not all crazy. On to next question. Some of you have mentioned on this a little bit, but do you find that your bar or your restaurant is profitable directly or indirectly? So is it profitable as a business itself, or is it more that you're just adding atmosphere, which then increases your bed nights? Susan, what about you?
Probably both. We are slightly profitable. I think that we're running at about 10% margins right now, so it's not too bad. We also our accounting isn't correct right now for doing it. We feed our volunteers. We always have like 6 to 8 work for stay people at a time, and they get free breakfast and they get 50% off food. So we haven't really deducted that yet off the costs from the restaurants. So our accounting isn't being done correctly. So I think we're probably making a little bit more money than we think we are. We add that to personnel costs. But I think what it does for us is atmosphere. You know, we're not right next to a bar, so people hang out there till about 11 o'clock at night, and you know they pregame, and then they go out to the bars. You know, in Hako, things start around 11 o'clock at night. So it's a great way for everybody to hang out during the day by the pool when they're not surfing. They drink, they eat, and then they meet each other, and then go out at night. And we have games. We have beer pong and cornhole and darts and other things. So it just makes it a really fun place to hang out.
Sounds awesome.
It is pretty. And then you go up on the rooftop, watch the sunset with a beer. So it's pretty nice.
Go to your website. It definitely made me want to hop a plane real fast. Jamelia and Alex, what about you? You guys just barely break even? Do you make money off of it?
When we're in the high season, it really we can actually make some pretty decent money off the bar, especially if we just get one or two of those people who just buy everybody drinks all the time.
And shots.
And shots,
Yeah.
especially. And we kind of have some sort of tricks that we do to get people to drink more. We have connections with local clubs not too far away, so we get people to sign up for them and then really encourage them that drinks are much cheaper at our place.
You give like free shots here and there, so they start drinking more.
And cachaça is not really the most expensive
not at all.
thing, so we can just sort of do that, and it's great. And it's not in the red. That's the good news. It's usually either we're breaking even or we have a little bit of profit.
That's it.
Okay. And Gordo, what about you? Obviously your pub, or I hope, is profitable, if that's the main business. So is the hostel, I guess maybe it's the opposite question, is the hostel going to be profitable, or is that just going to be extra for the pub?
I guess it depends how you account for everything. But no, I mean, yeah, the pub at the moment is profitable. I wouldn't say it's not a huge earner, but it's going okay. But most of the sort of the cost basis that I'm sort of having to deal with isn't going to change once the hostel opens. There's a few more sort of staff costs, and obviously utilities go for it. But it's not most of the rent and most of the staffing costs and all that sort of stuff are currently being covered, just with the bar. So in theory, if the bar's sort of looking after the business as it stands, adding a whole lot of beds should make it quite profitable. But that's always sort of famous last words. So yeah, well, the idea is that it will be profitable, but I guess as opposed to some of the other guys' situation, because we are dedicated to the public bar, and that's all we're trading as at the moment. I have to make money off that. It's not the sort of thing I can necessarily adjust a whole lot in order to, I can't lower my prices too much to, for the purpose of guests, if we had them. That's something obviously when the hostel's up and running and that's generating it sort of, that's covering all the costs and so on, then I've got a bit more room to move with the bar, and we can, drop the prices a little bit and focus more on the guests. But at the moment, it's a slightly different equation. So, yeah, does that answer it?
Yeah, sounds great. Beto, if you want to take that question as well, and then add on to it also, do you feel that it's especially because you have a few different places, is it a full second business? Is it part of your business in terms of workload? How much does it really add?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, on the original Lime Time and the Hostel in Rio, I don't think we make a decent amount of money on the bar. Of course not. I believe that our main products are beds, and we try to sell beds. So if you create a good social atmosphere, we believe that people will stay another night, and they will recommend the hostel to other people. So the focus on these other hostels has always been that we have to sell beds. We came up with ideas of like one day a week we do every night, for example, we do give free caipirinhas, but on Tuesdays we have Caipi Tuesday, so it's like 2 hours of free caipirinhas. As they mentioned, cachaça is very cheap in Brazil, so it's not a big deal. But then we do sell beds. As for the new Lime Time São Paulo the bar, I remember the previous owners, as I said, they used to run it as together, but mostly separate businesses, and they were too focused on the bar because they were making more money on the bar instead of the hostel. And I come from a different experience where I said, no, the hostel is the main thing, is the thing that I know how to operate, and that's where we have to make our money, and the bar has to be extra and has to be profitable, but it must be, I think the hostel has to pay all the bills and the bar be just profit. But it seems to be very different. And yeah, as a second question, for me, it's a completely different business. It's tricky, for example, to get the guests to stay at the bar because there are more bars around, so they kind of want to see what's in the city instead of staying with us. So we have to come up with different ideas or different deals for the guests so they stay. And then you mostly deal with the locals there. Sometimes locals, they come and they come to pay their bill, and they're like, oh, hold on, is the hostel here? They didn't even realize, even though we have signs and stuff, you know. We try to
They just
promote
only saw the
yeah, we try to promote, like the bar has a name of its own, and then we try to do the things like Lime Time Hostels and the Sublime Bar, but then we came up to say, well, it's too complicated, let's just focus on the hostel so people see that, oh, I kind of like the idea of go drinking in a hostel. It's like going to a hotel bar, I'm going to go drink in a hostel bar, so we're trying that approach right now. But yes, it's a whole extra business. Wish I didn't have to do that. I see that we do have the market. It's a bit complicated in Brazil right now. The costs are very high. We have problems with water shortage and electricity. Everything's super expensive right now. So most hostels in the city, even in Rio or São Paulo or in Brazil in general, they're mostly trying to do extra things to make money. So just running a hostel these days has been very complicated. It's not paying the bills. So everybody else is trying to do something else. So it's a shame that I want to run a hostel. That's what I like to do. I didn't want to be having to put extra effort just to pay the bills. You know?
Okay, that actually kind of brings to a question that we got from a Twitter follower just now. He asked, what about a bar in a bigger or a city-type location? Is it different? So I think some of you guys are in more off the beaten path, smaller towns. Obviously, Bebeto, you're in big cities. Do you think there's quite a difference of running a bar or restaurant with a hostel in a small area versus the big city? What would you say to that? Anyone want to go first? Susan? I think you're still muted, Susan.
Yeah. We're in like a small town, you know, a very, very touristy surf town. So, and we're sort of right now on the main strip. So we don't get people kind of wandering in off the street into a bar. So it's mostly, you know, and we close at 11, which is early in town, you know, so people can sleep there. So, you know, 11 o'clock the bar closes and everybody we kick them out and go to town.
Okay.
So
Gordo, what about you? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So it probably is different.
Yeah, Gordo, you're right in London, but you've had hostel management experience quite a few places with and without bars. How do you feel that it differs?
I think most of the places that I've worked that have had a full bar have been in, well, big enough cities, Edinburgh, Melbourne, Sydney, and obviously now I'm in London. The sort of hostel I've worked in have been in, I guess, sort of more remote locations. It's generally sort of a fridge with some beer in it. People, yeah, I think you posted some pictures about that on one of your blogs. And I guess it just sort of comes down to how much traffic how much you're going to be dealing with the public, how much sort of foot traffic you expect to be getting or hope to be getting. So if you're aiming for the public, then obviously in a bigger city you're going to have a completely different set of challenges. But if you are in a sort of a small town that's got a limited amount of nightlife, you're never going to get people to stay all night. But I think it's pretty easy to get with that sort of limited choice. People will always sort of gravitate to the social area and have a few beers first before they they go out and hit the town. Whereas my situation, I'm appealing to the public, so I have to try and, well, I kind of expect the backpackers eventually to sort of be having the pre-game, as someone said, and then head out, and then we'll sort of swap, and all the public flood in afterwards. So,
Right. Okay. That goes going in and out. And just along with that, before we get more into the money side and bring in Mark and Chris, do any of you feel like this isn't a second business? It seems like most of you have said it's kind of an entire game unto itself. Do any of you really operate it just as kind of a small thing on the side, or does it feel like a full-on second business? You can just raise your hand. Gordo?
Most of the places I've worked at, because the bar's been for the guests, it's certainly felt in those cases more of a sort of a side option. It's not been the focus of the bar, so it is like a second business, but you run quite separately. In mind, what I'm sort of hoping to achieve is actually to try and treat them as one business. But I think if you're treating it as two completely separate businesses, it's very difficult to get them to sort of intertwine. So you've got to try and see them as inherently connected, rather than just having a hostel and having, in the other hand, you got your bar.
Okay. Jamila, Alex?
Yeah, it really, for us, it feels like it's the same exact thing. Our bar is just intertwined with our hostel. Like Roberto said, mostly we're selling beds, but we try and get everybody to the bar because we feel like they go hand in hand. But honestly, when we've had people or our hostel being fully booked and like a break in volunteers or staff members, and it's been just me and Jamili working, it really felt like it was two completely different separate entities. So I think I kind of like the idea of keeping it intertwined though with the hostel. If you're going to have a hostel bar, it should feel like one thing, and so you should make sure that beds and everything go hand in hand with the bar. But sometimes it's easy to lose track of that when you lose your mind as well.
Fair. That's when you start drinking all the profits. All right, so we're going to switch over to money now, and bring in Mark and Chris. Hello, if you're still with us. Sorry it took so long to get to you. So the first question for all of you, and then Mark and Chris, if you guys want to comment on maybe how tab can affect this. Does your hostel and or bar restaurant work off cash cards, a manual tab system, as in staff are marking down, tally marks on paper, an electronic tab system, so guests have their key card to swipe or a bracelet to swipe or something like that? What are different ways that you're keeping track of money coming in? Susan, do you want to start with you?
So we have a point of service system like on an iPad, and so everything gets marked down in the POS, and people can either pay with credit card that's actually not linked to the POS, but we just mark paid. They can pay in cash, mark it pay, or we can put it on a tab, which we then go back and manually at the end of every shift we add it to the reservation system tab. So we have those three different options.
Do you have a credit card on file on the reservation system, and that's how?
No, they have to actually swipe it. It never works for us keeping their credit card on file. It never goes through.
Okay.
We manually swipe their credit card if they want to pay by credit card.
So when they run a tab, you're saying at the end of the shift, so at 11 p.m. when the bar's closing, that's when you're swiping their card?
Well, no, they'll swipe their card as they go, but what we'll do is at the end of the shift, we'll take whoever hasn't paid their tab and we'll put it on their room charge as an extra, called bar charge.
Okay. So how do you get them to pay their tab at the end, as in their room charge? Like, say they drank $50. Sorry?
Yeah, when they check out.
But if you don't have a credit card on file, do you ever have issues with them saying, oh, I didn't drink that much, I'm not paying that, and walk away? Or how do you get them to pay?
Once in a while we'll have an issue, and truthfully, it's usually our fault. Like if the person didn't, the bartender, because a lot of times it's a volunteer was helping out, didn't actually mark it paid. But you know, we haven't had a problem with them saying we haven't paid. The bigger problem has been is that if they think we have their credit card on file and they've left in the morning and they didn't, you know, because we've already swiped their credit card once, they think we keep it. So they haven't
Right.
paid. So we have to send out a PayPal, and 80% of the time they pay it. So we do lose a little money that way, but we're not losing a ton. But
But it's more the value that they can run up a tab and probably end up drinking more that way.
right, and then we don't have to have the cash,
Okay.
which we like. We don't, you know, less problem for, you know, for less likely for problems if we don't have their cash right there.
Fair. Okay. Jamelia and Alex, what about you? What payment options do you take, and do you run tab systems?
We used to take cards, but it created a lot of problems. So we went straight back to cash. We have a tab system.
Since the beginning, since we started, we
Yeah.
wanted to have a tab system.
People forget how much they're drinking if there's a tab system.
And because you deal straight cash, have you had any issues at the end where suddenly they owe 3 times the amount of their room in alcohol? Not that that's ever happened to me,
A
but
couple times.
A couple,
Yeah.
a couple times. Yeah, people thought other people were putting drinks on their tab. It is a manual system, so usually people will be like, why the hell is my tab completely across the board there? And then I'll tell them, and then we can have a discussion. The problems arise when the next day one of the guests checks out before the other guests check out, and they're like, well, he was supposed to pay for a bunch of stuff, and we don't want to pay this much. I'm just sorry. To make sure everybody pays, if they leave early, which I always know when they leave, one of me, Jamini, or the staff will chase them down. We have bracelets with a number on them that connects to their bed number. Plug it all into the computer, and then we chase everyone down the night before, make sure they pay everything. And if there's an issue like this, we can solve it by sometimes taking a little extra off the top. And we sort of have like a sort of a what am I trying to say? Like a little cloud. Like worst case scenario, if we drop this much price on our drinks, we'll still be profitable. It's kind of like a very last case scenario in a situation like this, though.
so like if they owed $100 and they're freaking out about it, and you say, well, why don't we just do 85? You're still getting your money, but they're happy.
Yeah, we avoid that at all possible times. But we've only ever had to do that, I think, once or twice.
Yeah, no more than twice.
Okay. Maybe, yeah. I would guess so much that with tab systems without a card on file that you'd get screwed over a lot more than that, but it seems.
Well, like in Brazil, the reason why having a card was so hard is the only reason to get the only way to get an international card is to have the most expensive credit card machine every month. If you accept more than a certain amount, then you have to change the way your business is structured due to the law, and you cannot swipe cards manually or anything. So there's no point to keep a card on file. It's just a blank threat.
Yeah, I think I've never got complaints about it.
No.
Yeah, except cash only as on Hostel Warden.
Yeah.
That's it.
But Beto, what about you? What kind of payments do you accept, and do you run a tab system?
Well, in the original Lifetime, we only take cash. In Rio, we sometimes take card. We try to avoid. At the bar on the other Lifetime, we have to take card because most Brazilians, especially in São Paulo, it's a big city, most Brazilians prefer to pay by card. What we do, we only take debit because debit has a lower fee, and also you get the money the next day. Credit card takes a bigger fee, and they only give you the money 30 days later. So for us, it's better. But for the guests, especially for accommodation, we only take cash. But since we take card for the bar, we allow the guests to pay by card for their bar bill. As for the tab, in Brazil, it's a common thing. So tabs in Brazil, it's common. Nobody carries cash, and also you don't pay for the drinks on the bar for the barman. So yeah, tabs is the best thing. I like tabs. When I go to the States, I normally leave my card there, open a tab, and I normally forget my card at the bars that I go to. but yeah, that's the thing. Like people will drink more, people will spend more. I'm even considering going back to not charging all the time for the beds at check-in or allowing people to extend without paying, because that way people were more confident in staying overnight and everything. As for we were talking about losing money when people come to check out, we say, look, you had 3 beers. The guy said, no, I only had 2. We never put on a fight. I mean, we're gonna be arguing about it. I don't know what happened last night. The bartender was there. He's not there anymore. Normally, our bartender is very organized and writes down everything and adds to the system right away. But sometimes things like that happen. And we try also to ask every guest, what did you have at the bar? Because sometimes the bartender forgot to add something, and then normally sometimes you have nothing, or sometimes you have like 2 beers. The guy said, no, I actually had 4. Most people in general are honest about whatever they drank. So, I mean, we just go like that. I've seen a lot of hostels doing the honest system where like people write down their own thing. I'm always puzzled on how that'll work. It really depends on the kind of hostel you're running or the size. But yeah, I mean, it's a way, but we cannot do that.
Okay. And Gordo, what about you quickly? Do you accept cash and cards or any other payment system, and do you allow tabs?
Cash and card, yep. We run tabs, but same sort of thing as Roberto was saying. People leave a card behind the bar, and yeah, so they're going to come back if they do run off without paying. Yeah, basically anticipate doing the same thing when the hostel opens. If people don't want to pay up front, they can hold onto your card and go from there.
Okay, perfect. Now, Mark and Chris, tell us a little bit more about Tab, what it does, and in relation to this question, does it run a Tab system, or how does it work?
Cool. Okay, sure. So slightly confusingly, it doesn't actually run a Tab system on the app, but the app is for accepting payments in place of credit. It also lets your guests get cash back from you. So the idea is that what we're trying to do is let hostels accept card payments much more cheaply. And we know that in a lot of countries, like Brazil, it's quite difficult to do that at a reasonable cost. PayPal, because we charge a customer's card in the US ourselves, and then we pay money directly to the hostel in their bank account. So we're trying to sort of sidestep that problem. And then the other thing we do is from the hostel instead of using an ATM, because ATMs are actually very expensive, particularly for smaller transactions when you're on the road. Access cash that they don't necessarily want to keep on the premises, and so we let them earn a little bit of money by giving that out to customers as well. So that's kind of our solution, and I mean it's interesting. We started traveling while researching this, and we found this sort of tab issue of how do people pay for it at the end of the day. And one of the problems that people do run into is they, as you said, and suddenly they don't have the cash to pay for it, or the hostel isn't one that accepts card, and you end up with quite a lot of hassle during checkout when they're running for a bus and so on. So that's definitely something we've seen, and our way to kind of address that is getting people signed up on us so that when they pay, it's a very quick kind of 20-second process.
So how does it work in reality with the bar? So say you have a hostel in Brazil that's only accepting cash right now. How does the guest have to have this on their phone, and the bar also has to have an iPad or something? How does it work?
So you can do it in a couple of different ways. The easiest way is if the guest does have it on their phone already, or if they want to sign up to it, which takes about a minute to download and sign up. Then all the hostel or the bar needs to do is type in their code on the user's phone when the user has entered the amount. Quick, it's probably faster than using a chip and pin machine or doing a credit card signature. But then we also have a model for places with worse Wi-Fi or places that just want to sign up, where it can all be done on a cheap Android phone. Really, it doesn't need an expensive credit card machine. we just use the camera on the phone to scan the card, and we take a couple of details from the customer for fraud reasons. So we're trying to sort of take out a lot of the friction to make that quick, so it works in a bar as well as a reception.
So sorry, you cut out for a second, and I didn't quite catch. You were saying for places that don't have great Wi-Fi, you have another solution, and I gather that that was taking a photo of the card. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So instead of using a credit card terminal that you
Hello?
can you hear me all right?
Yeah,
You can just get a cheap Android or merchant app. Okay, let me try leaning a bit. So yeah, you just use the phone. Use the phone to scan the details from the customer, which we just use for fraud checks and so on. So it functions much like a credit card terminal in that sense.
How comfortable do you think people will be with scanning their credit cards with identity theft and things? I mean, to me, it kind of sounds like you're taking a photo of your personal details rather than, you know, swiping a card. In what way can they feel secure about that?
I mean, so we were sort of worried about that question actually at the start, but we've had very little pushback. People are quite familiar with it now from other apps that they've used, particularly this generation. You know, things like Uber. It's a very typical thing now to scan a card, and if you want, you can always say that you're. So it's, you know, and people do it once when they sign up. So in many ways, that's much safer than, you know, sticking your card in a random ATM machine, which in a lot of places can lead to skimming.
Right. And your option, so part of it is for payments. So two questions with that. The first one is, how does it help a hostel in terms of currency exchange? You were saying it helps take credit cards cheaper. So I'm assuming you mean your fees are lower, but does it help with currency exchange as well?
Yeah. Is a currency exchange ourselves, and we do it in bigger volume. So we would charge the customer in their home currency, whether it's euros or yen, and we pay the hostel directly in their own currency. So we handle the FX for them.
So it's saving the guests money because they're paying in their local currency rather than having to get money out, and it's saving the hostel money because they're getting paid in their local currency and at a lower rate than what accepting a credit card would be.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you have different rates for different hostels or different situations, or is it one flat rate?
So at the moment, it's a
It's what? Sorry, you
it's
cut
pretty
out.
charging. We're charging. So we're currently charging all the users. It's 3.8% now, and we're trying to drop that as we grow. But for the hostel, what we actually do is we give them 1% of any cash that they hand out, and we don't charge them for taking payments. So what would customers pay? But they're paying us a lower fee than they would normally pay for taking money out of an ATM or for an international charge. So
Okay.
it actually works on both sides.
So you're saying because the app gives cash back to travelers, as in hostels can give cash to travelers using it, the hostel's also getting 1% of whatever cash they give back?
Exactly, yeah. So if you're giving out $100 to a customer in your local currency, we would pay you 101, and we're charging the customer 103.80, which is a better rate than almost anyone would get at most ATMs.
And a good point to make is one thing we found on this question about having tab systems. I mean, some hostels, yeah, they've got tab systems running anyway on whatever, an honor system or not. For those that don't, it's useful, and you might go on to this question on the ATM question, it's useful to have a bit of extra cash flowing around. Like otherwise people, if you don't have a tab, you can't get cash without going to an ATM. People stop spending. If you've got a bar, etc., like we're talking about here. So it's kind of an alternative to that as well, where people get money out rather than walking into town to find the ATM, and then they start spending it. We find running up and down to where the receptionists go back. They go back to the bar and they buy more beers. So it's good for that. Some of the money goes back into the hostel.
So that was, they just brought up a question that we had. For all of you with hostels, do you have an ATM in your bar or in your hostel? Do any of you have ATMs? Bebeto, Gordo, none of you? No. I have been to hostels with ATMs, both with bars and without bars. And for that reason, a lot of them take cash only, or just people want cash. I'm not very familiar with ATMs in terms of, maybe you guys would know, how expensive they are for hostels to have, if they're making money off them. I know the rates for travelers are often awful on those independent ATMs. You can have fees upwards of $5 to use them. So they're pretty shit for the traveler. But so you're saying with this system, if you are a cash only bar and your guest runs out of cash, instead of sending them down the road to the ATM where you risk losing them because then they just go to another bar that's next door, with this system they can just go to reception and say, hey, I want cash. Reception gives them cash. Not only that, the hostel's making money on this cash that they're giving out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point on ATMs. So they're only found in Europe in hostels, yeah,
like private ones.
But they tend to be, as you say, very expensive. So like the typical charge from the ATM is upwards of $5, and then the guest is also going to pay the international bank fees for using their card abroad, and often that adds in another $5 or more. So it's pretty terrible for customers.
And the currency conversion can be pretty crap as well.
Exactly.
Okay. What do you guys might know more about this? Another question for the hostels are, as a hostel, would you be interested in an app that allows travelers to pay without cash? Have you done this already? So besides just Tab specifically, have you guys ever looked into these types of apps? Is it something that you think would work well for you or not? Susan, what about you? Have you looked into anything like this? I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, I've actually talked to these guys. Hi. Basically, we've got a couple different issues. One is that every time that we end up putting cash in the bank, we end up having to pay a large tax on it. So I'm not sure. So I think that might affect us with this. That's one of the issues that we've talked about with them. The second issue is that means that we have to have a lot of cash on hand, which I don't know that we always want to have that much cash on hand. And so that might be the two biggest issues that we have. And well, the third is, but it sounds like you have a solution, is our internet is awful. So it's very unreliable. So.
Okay. Gordo, what about you? Have you looked into any types of apps like these?
I did have a look at a few sort of things, not necessarily, I guess, for currency exchange purposes, but yeah, alternatives to your chip and PIN card and everything. And there's some quite neat ones that have, especially like this idea of being paid to hand money out. That's always a good one. That have sort of good rates and so on. In the end, I think just because of my bank and everything, the money was going to get there faster, and the cost was going to be, I guess, sort of pretty marginal. With just the standard sort of chip and pin style one. We do a bit of cash back for people if they want an extra sort of 20 or 40. We don't give out hundreds of pounds. Just with our current card system. I guess once I sort of see how much people are paying with cards when the hostel opens, if I need to sort of review our current system. But at the moment, I think what I've got is sort of seems to do the job.
So you and I guess Susan as well might be a little different because you accept cards. It's cash and card, correct? Versus maybe, we can hear from Jamili and Alex in a minute, and Bebeto, I think, was cash only as well. If you're only accepting cash, maybe this is an alternative. So Jamili and Alex, what do you think about this or other systems that might be similar?
Well, kind of like Susan was saying, we don't like the idea of keeping a ton of cash on hand. We have sort of dealt with this before with people needing money when we had a credit card machine and charging for an extra %. But for the most part, we like to put our cash in the bank. And the other thing is, as I was saying this earlier with the credit card machine, money deposited directly into the bank. If too many people use this app every month, we would fall into a different sort of tax bracket, and that would cause a few problems for our small business. It would sort of become an issue. However, if we could somehow limit that to a certain amount, but that's getting deep here. It's for us. It's really easy to just accept cash. We have banks close by, and then with there's a couple times I think where I would appreciate this in certain situations where I've had with guests who really had terrible ways of paying, which took me a lot of effort. So knowing about these systems just allows an extra method of payment, which I think is actually good in some senses. When PayPal doesn't work, the bank transfers don't work. There's a couple guests who've actually just two guests who've escaped because there was absolutely no way they could pay us. And I think having an extra little bit of a system like this might actually help in that sense.
The only thing is, as we're a small hostel, what would work? Like, we'll get the payments of the day within what, 24 hours, 48 hours, or be the end of the month? Because the dollar changes a lot in Brazil. Like today it's a rate, tomorrow is a different rate, because at the end of the month would affect us. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah,
Fluctuation.
Because we're so small, we need like to try and have our bar money by the time people leave, so that we can get more for the bar, and same for bed money and stuff, so we can keep paying our expenses. Like what Beto said, it's gotten pretty expensive to run this kind of thing in Brazil, so it's good to have it. How long does it take for you guys to deposit it in the bank? That's my biggest question.
So yeah, we do that weekly at the moment. So it's pretty quick, certainly much faster than a month. And you actually don't take any foreign exchange risk because we pay you in reals. And it also depends on volume. So some of our larger customers now, we make payments more frequently because they're doing quite a lot of volume. So it all depends, and it's a good point on cash flow. You know, that's something we've heard. I would say actually, I mean, an interesting thing is we probably found more people paying with it than getting cash from it. So actually, you know, cash availability hasn't been much of a problem, and it's usually been quite small amounts that people wanted here and there. And you sort of net end up with a bit less cash in the till rather than having to keep a lot behind it. So in a way, the risk is lower rather than higher from a theft perspective.
I could see, I know for me it would be useful because you don't get hit up with those high fees of getting cash back. So I know that my bank in particular is connected with a lot of different banks around the world where I don't get charges from that ATM. So I was able to go get 20 bucks or 40 bucks out at a time because I didn't have a fee, versus in other countries where we don't have that connection, I'm getting 300 or 400 out at once and then trying to keep it on my body and keep it locked up just to avoid that fee. So I could see that people, when they get cash back, it would actually be rather small amounts because they're avoiding that fee. And could you put a cap on it as well? Can you set it so that people can only get up to a certain amount, so they're not coming to the hostel saying, "Hey, I want 400 bucks in cash right now"?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we let merchants choose where they want to set the limits and how much they're comfortable giving out. Obviously, if they don't have enough cash in the till, you know, they can't give it out, and
Right.
that's fine. So yeah, it's there for a little bit of extra, really, to make people's lives easier more than
Okay.
Than ATM.
But Beto, would you consider doing an app like this, or have you tried any or looked into any?
I have a couple of things to say, and I have a question for them. Just let me ask them this question first. It just came to my. I just realized that for every money that we receive from those payments, we have to pay taxes. So if let's say you come to my hostel, you want 100 reais from me, you pay me. So I'm sorry, I totally forgot the name of the system.
Tab.
Tab. So they pay through Tab, and I give them 100 reais, whatever. I don't know if there's a fee or a commission for the hostel, but I also have I have to pay taxes on top of that because technically I am receiving a payment. How exactly does that work for you guys?
So the way that we structured it is that there are two slightly separate bits. So if it's a payment, then absolutely it's taxable. If it's just reimbursing you the cash that you've already given out, then it's more like a sort of short-term loan that you've made to a customer and then you're being repaid. So actually, the only element that is taxable is that commission fee that we're paying you. So it would be the 1% that's taxed, not
Yeah,
the.
but the fact that I received the money into my account later on, I will have to declare that. There's no way I can say, oh no, this was a different thing. It doesn't work like that in Brazil. Also, the other question you said, you guys were going to make the payment back to us in reals. The reason why PayPal works around the globe is because they have offices and they have their banking system in each country. That's why if I charge 35 reais, the person will pay 35 reais, and then PayPal will deal with the conversion, and I'll get 35 reais right into my bank account. It's not going to be an international bank transfer and stuff like that, which adds more taxes and fees and stuff. How exactly are you guys doing the payments to Brazil, for example? Brazil is a very tricky country, especially for those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. So, the truth is we haven't actually launched in Brazil yet, so we haven't tested that out. But we're partnering with quite a number of banks around the world who let us do local bank transfers, basically. So that we're effectively sort of copying the PayPal system in the way that we're handling it all on a local basis.
So where you've launched is where you have connections with banks, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be one bank per country because we've got a few that handle quite a number of banks for us, so they're giving us kind of a quick global footprint. But in the short term, if the charges are a bit higher, we actually reimburse hostels for the charges if they do get charged for receiving payments from us, because that's only fair.
Okay. Do you guys have other questions for them specifically about this system or about other apps that can help this?
Yeah, so we're talking about the cards thing. I have a few points to that. First of all, of course, we prefer cash because cash doesn't have credit cards or any other system will charge. So that way we can keep our prices lower or anything, because nothing is free, right? If you say you have free breakfast, of course the price for that breakfast is included on your price. And another thing that is illegal in Brazil, but I've seen around the world, is that you can say, oh, if you pay by card, we're going to have to add 2.5% or whatever percent on top of the price. But that is completely illegal in Brazil. You cannot do that. I mean, some hostels do it, and they just expect to, if there's a Brazilian there, they go say like, hey, you cannot do that, and then, oh, if it's a Brazilian, like, okay, fine, whatever, we're not going to do it, but they do it for foreigners because foreigners don't know better. But you cannot do that. So that's why I think we prefer taking cash over card. It's here and there, right? Because of course you have the benefits of getting the money straight to your account and all that. Don't have to deal with much money. But Brazil, as I said, is a tricky place. I would love to talk to you guys about it too. But Brazil, for every sort of business, everything gets here the latest because it's so tricky.
Mark and Chris, what countries have you launched with, or where have you found success that people are really latching on, not just to your system, but in general, this new wave of travelers with smartphones? And I know in the U.S., when I go out to eat now with friends, we all Venmo money to each other to pay the bill, things like that. Where are you finding this working?
So I think we've probably had most interest from Central America, South America, and Asia. And in India, actually, to quite a big extent. We've been running quite a sort of tight controlled test in Guatemala, actually, to sort of iron out all the niggles and try and improve the speed and the process for everybody. So that's probably been our kind of main area. But yeah, to be honest, sort of in terms of interest level, it's pretty much a universal problem as far as we've seen. Maybe less so in the US and less so in Western Europe, where you have a slightly different infrastructure.
Yeah, in terms of alternative systems, a lot of people are doing things. PayPal, obviously, Venmo's popular in the US, but it's not really in Europe yet. And then things like Apple Pay are coming over the top and being on everybody's phone. But there isn't really one big winner yet, and there's nobody that's focusing on the problems that people have when traveling. Because we're kind of coming at it from the point of view of what it was like when we were traveling and having these huge fees and spending 10% of what your travel budget was on, to your bank, because you didn't realize all the costs were going to add up to that. So there isn't, I suppose suppose what people do is use PayPal when they need to. They either get money from an ATM, or in some places they use PayPal, and there really isn't a big alternative to that that's in a lot of countries. You can't take Venmo abroad and anything like that yet. I mean, you really have to change depending on which country you're in, which people don't do when they're traveling.
Okay, interesting. So universal problem, but testing it in small areas, basically. Cool. Do you guys have any other questions or comments? I know this one ran kind of late, but I wanted to make sure we got to all the money stuff. Gordo, I think Gordo's not even here right now. Jamili, Alex, Susan, Bebeto, anyone? No. Mark and Chris, do you have anything you want to add about your your app, or otherwise any other apps things?
Just if anyone wants to talk more about it, it would be great. Bebeto, we'll shoot you an email, and we'd love to hear a bit more about Brazil.
Okay. We'll hook you guys up later. We'll add your information onto the blog post that we'll have this recorded as well, so people can get in touch with you guys. So, to everyone who was listening, we had several viewers today. I know it got a bit long, but thanks for sticking with us. For those of you watching this later, if you have questions for any of the panelists or for me or anyone, we can get you that information. And as always, thank you for participating, and thanks for watching. We will see you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.